What would Dreamland be without dreams? A nightmare. The dream spring, source of all dreams, has dried up, taking with it all the blissful dreams of Dreamland. It's up to Kirby, the bombastic blimp, to return happy naps to the inhabitants of Dreamland. Kirby's appetite for adventure is as big as ever as he eats his way through a feast of all new enemies. In this adventure, he can also steal the abilities of the bad guys he scarfs down. With this new power, Kirby can perform 20 new tricks that will help him make his way through the nightmare-infested Dreamland. Kirby's Adventure features brand new worlds to explore with the same fun, action-packed feel that made Kirby's Dream Land for Game Boy a hit. This is Kirby's Adventure. Bet you didn't know that. From HAL Labs and Nintendo, released in 1993. Also known, get ready to hear funny words, Hoshi no Kabi, Yume no Izumi no Monogatari. Oh, Monogatari. Yeah, like an N on my HDMI screen. Anyway, literally, Kirby of the Stars, the story of the Fountain of Dreams. Platforming game developed by HAL, published by Nintendo for the NES, first released in 1993 in Japan. Also in North America and Europe the same year. Kirby's Adventure was the second and last game to use Kirby's original design, albeit in color. The first to use it was Kirby's Dream Land, and this is the first game Kirby gained his trademark colors, as the first game was in black and white. Kirby's Adventure is the only NES the NES system Kirby game, and it is the second game in the Kirby series, following his debut on the Game Boy. It's also the first Kirby game on a home console to be in color and to have a save feature. It's also the first appearance of the popular character Meta Knight. A remake of the game for the Game Boy Advance titled Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland was released in 2002. The original version is on the Virtual Console. It was one of 12 masterpieces provided in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. A 3D Classics version was released for the 3DS eShop in 2011, and a Virtual Console version for the Wii was released in 2013. After Kirby wakes up from his after-lunch nap without having any dreams, he goes to the Fountain of Dreams to investigate. In doing so, he discovers that King Dedede has stolen the Star Rod, the source of power for the Fountain of Dreams, and broken it into 7 pieces, giving 6 fragments to his allies: Wispy Woods, Paint Roller, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright, Kracko, Heavy Mole, and Meta Knight, and also keeping one for himself. Without the Star Rod, all of the inhabitants of Dreamland are becoming restless and unable to dream. Kirby decides to track down the fragments of the Star Rod and bring them back to the Fountain of Dreams in order to restore everyone's dreams. Kirby travels through 7 worlds, battling enemies, mini-bosses, and bosses through treacherous terrain in order to collect all 7 fragments of the Star Rod. Once Kirby defeats King Dedede and rebuilds the Star Rod, with Dedede strangely begging him not to, he places it back into the Fountain of Dreams. However, an ominous black aura fills the sky as a dark creature named Nightmare emerges from the fountain. It turns out that Nightmare has corrupted the fountain, and King Dedede removed the Star Rod, broke it, and spread it across Dreamland with the intention of protecting Dreamland. Nightmare then speedily flies off into space, but rather than allowing him to escape, King Dedede inhales Kirby and the Star Rod and spits them into the air, projecting Kirby towards Nightmare. Kirby then uses the Star Rod to defeat Nightmare and saves Dreamland once again. The end sequence shows Kirby and King Dedede flying together and reconciling, while scrolling text explains that after Nightmare's defeat, before the end credits roll, and Kirby waving the player goodbye. After, while flying away on a warp star, breaking the 4th wall in the process. A majority of the Kirby games, and this one especially, is a platform. 7 worlds, set of regular levels, a boss fight, and a warp star door. Most worlds also contain mini-games, museums, or arenas, which you can just battle for power-ups and different abilities and things like that. The game was the first in the series to include a save feature, and it automatically saves your progress after each level. The objective of the game is to simply reach the end of the level. If you touch an enemy or a dangerous object, you take a point of damage. If all your hit points are lost, you fall off the bottom of the screen and die. Kirby can touch or eat food items to immediately replenish health or gain temporary invulnerability. You can walk, run, jump, attack enemies, dodge enemies by slide tackling. You can fly by inflating yourself, and able to reach any height that isn't blocked by an obstacle. While flying, Kirby cannot use your other abilities, but you can exhale at any time, releasing a puff of air that can be used to damage an enemy or destroy blocks. Kirby's main ability, however, allows him to inhale indefinitely, sucking nearby enemies and objects into his mouth. Once inhaled, objects remain in his mouth until he either spits them out or swallows them. Upon swallowing certain enemies, Kirby copies the special ability that enemy possesses, giving him access to a wide variety of powers, some of which may be needed to solve various puzzles. Usually, Kirby cannot inhale anything while he has use of a special ability, but he can drop the ability by pressing the select button. Kirby can regain the ability by inhaling and swallowing that same star before it disappears. IGN remarked that by 1993, the programmers of the world had learned how to unleash every last ounce of power hidden inside the original Nintendo system. Kirby's Adventure was one of those late-generation games, and probably the best of them. The game features special visual effects, pseudo-3D backgrounds, and parallax scrolling. At 6 megabit, it was one of the largest games ever released for the NES. Even so, it did not use Nintendo's most powerful mapper chip, the MMC5, but rather the older, more common and less expensive MMC3. And herein lies, I think, the biggest flaw with Kirby. They tried to cram so much into it, but didn't give it a chip powerful enough to do everything. The game suffers from slowdown drastically in some spots. This was remade for the Game Boy Advance. Entitled The Fountain of Dreams Deluxe in the Japanese. The remake was released in Japan in 2002 and North America in 2002, and has upgraded graphics and sound with some minor changes to the gameplay, new minigames, and the ability to play as Meta Knight in a game called Meta Nightmare. Also, Nightmare in Dreamland allows for co-op with 2 to 4 players who play as different colored Kirbys. That I should point out. A lot of people say, "Why did you play a remake? You don't like remakes." This was a good remake because it didn't add a lot. It gave you a couple new mini games, but it was an upgrade. It was an update, and it didn't draw the game back in any way. I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy Origins. You were a graphical update. You were a visual update, but that game on a disc system was horrible. Plus, the magic system got all weird. Not nearly as fun. But for the 20th anniversary, Nintendo released Kirby's Dream Collection. Kirby's Adventure is one of the games on the disc, and I have that. I'm a happy man. Kirby's Adventure received widespread critical acclaim and is considered to be a classic game on the NES. IGN considers it to be one of the greatest late-generation NES games, praising mostly the sound and graphics, giving them a perfect score, while giving a 9.9 to the gameplay and 9 for presentation and lasting appeal, giving a total score of 9.5 out of 10. It was awarded Best NES Game of 93 by Electronic Gaming Monthly. Games Radar ranked it the 14th best NES game ever made. That's one above Excitebike. Can't tell you how good Excitebike is. GameSpot praised the copyability of the gameplay, but criticized the length of the game, saying it can beat the game in a single evening, with a total score of 7.3 out of 10. It also received good reviews from fans, with an average of 8.9 out of 10 on GameFAQs. This may be the first article I've read that points to a GameFAQs review. In 2009, Official Nintendo Magazine named this game the 69th game best ever on a Nintendo console. Not just the NES, any console. The remake has been received generally positive reviews with an average score of 80 on game ratings based on 28 reviews. Famitsu, a Japanese magazine, scored the Game Boy Advance version a 35 out of 40. Kirby's Adventure was released in 2011 and 12 in the United States and Europe and Japan for the 3DS as part of the 3D Classic series. A French version was released in Canada, making it the only French NES game released in North America. And the official soundtrack was released in Japan in 1994 by Sony Music Entertainment Japan with a vocalist, Meiko Miyata. Japanese singer and voices. The Kirby games, officially released, blah, blah, blah. There you go. So, Kirby, we all know, if you listen to Still in Beta, that Matt loves him some Kirby. I love me some Kirby, too. This game, I feel, was as great as it is and as expansive and massive as it is. This game, to me, really felt like, okay, we've got the Kirby formula established. We did that on the Game Boy. Now let's add to it on the NES and see how that goes. And then we're going to polish it on the Super Nintendo. I think that's what happened. This was, I think, the most logical second game in a series that has, I think, continually really kind of pushed the boundaries of what people thought were possible with some of these systems. You look at Kirby's Dream Land 3, and that is an amazingly attractive visual game. Then you get Kirby 64, which was just a ton of fun. You get Epic Yarn and all those games were just really, really neat looking and just introduced so many cool new features. It's classic. I mean, that's all there is to it. The Kirby games are great. This is one of my lesser favorite, but the games themselves are just wonderful.